Stephen Fry.
What a joy it is. Welcome to you, Stephen.
I'm never going to live up to that. That was a marvellous introduction. Thank you so much.
Well, my brother, who's out here, he's not actually wheelchair bound, but he's spending the day in a wheelchair for a charity. Was sitting out the front when he walked in, and I rang him. He said, "Come down and get me." And then he finished with, "What is the matter with you, darling?" Because we grew up on Blackadder, our house. So brilliant, and that
makes me feel very happy, and above all, I think very, very old.
Yeah, well, I don't think so.
No.
But it was a wonderful show, and you were wonderful in it.
Thank you.
But that's would have been replayed on television in this country and in the United Kingdom 400 times.
Yes, gosh, that's a thought, isn't it? And of course, when we made it, we never imagined that for a second. You hope, in those days, you hoped you might get a repeat on BBC's second channel, and that would be it.
Yep.
The idea that there would be these extraordinary afterlives for TV never crossed one's mind.
Did you get any royalty out of it? Or was there any additional
Every time it comes on?
That thought never crossed my mind. I suppose one does. It's a bit rude to ask. It's a bit vulgar, a bit unpleasant.
I suppose one
these kind
does.
of things, one has people to look after for you.
Yes.
No, it is indeed both a pleasure in terms of new generations saying nice things to you, but also a vindication of the fact that when you're doing it, it never seems to be quite what you hoped. I mean, the Blackadder is an example. There were 4 series, that's all, but each one was set in a different time period. The first one was medieval. The second one was Queen Elizabeth's time with Miranda Richardson as the Queen. Then there was one with Hugh Laurie as the sort of Prince Regent, and then one in the First World War. So each time the audience came to see it, they were rather disappointed because they were used to the one that they knew,
right.
and there was this, oh no, they've changed it. Why have they changed it? Because they hadn't seen any of the and so we always felt we were sort of running to catch up. That's a pathetic kind of typically English, oh, we were hopeless, wringing your hands. But that's how we survive.
And you and Rowan are great friends.
Yeah. Yes, I love Rowan. He's a remarkable man, apart from his talent, which is simply astonishing. I had this theory about comedy that developed out of a theory about painting. Because when I was watching both Rowan and Rick Mayall in one particular episode of Blackadder, and I realized that they were completely different in the way their comedy arose, utterly opposite, and both geniuses at the same time. And I thought, actually, that's a bit like, I'm quite fond of painting. So if you think of just 2 painters who happen both to come from the same country and both have surnames beginning with V, who are also complete opposites. Vermeer, who like sort of a maid pouring milk out of a jug, those sort of very quiet interior domestic scenes, unbelievably detailed and beautiful and serene, and you can look at them forever. And Van Gogh, this mess of paint. In one case, there's even there's a grasshopper caught in the paint from when he's painting outside, and it gets stuck as the paint dries. It's still there,
Really?
And that energy and that mass of paint going on. You can't see a single paintbrush in Vermeer. And you see nothing but paintbrush in Van Gogh. And it was the same with Rick. There would be Rick would come on like that. And it was just like his personality amplified to the max. And then there was Rowan, who was very quiet. And unless he was so to watch them both being so opposite, and it gives you kind of faith. And it's the same in sport. You get people who are just so mechanical and meticulous and trained and perfect, whether it's golf or darts or cricket, whatever it is,
Boycott.
and you get the romantic kind, as it were.
Yes.
You get the and it's a kind of 2 sides of humanity, and it's wonderful.
I only know Rowan through Mr. Bean. Does he actually talk?
well, we tease Rowan because he's always been very. I mustn't say careful. He's always been very sensible about money.
Well, careful.
He had this brilliant scheme with Mr. Bean. He said, I think what we'll do is we'll sell Mr. Bean everywhere, but not Italy. I love going to to Italy.
Yes.
And he didn't want to be stopped in the street in Italy. So his original plan was that he could have Italy free. Because the genius of Mr. Bean is because, as you intimated, he doesn't speak much. He can sell around the world. There is no language barrier at all with Mr. Bean. So it kind of harks back to the great days of Charlie Chaplin in that sense, that he could be a world international star. But of course, Italy got hold of it. And I remember about 2 years after he'd said this to me, I was in Florence, and there was a tourist gazzetta or whatever they call them in a little corner. And they had paper masks of Mr. Bean for sale.
That's working.
Sent him a photograph of those, exactly.
So just finishing on Blackadder, Richard Curtis obviously then went on to do Four Weddings and a Funeral and Love Actually and all the
here's some secret news that isn't secret, so I can tell you.
Yes.
He's going to win an honorary Oscar.
Wow.
This coming February.
That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you see that genius in him?
It's so interesting. Yeah, again, it's two different kinds of genius. He co-wrote them, the first series only with Rowan, and then the next 3 series and other iterations of the show he wrote with Ben Elton.
Yep.
And Ben is just magnificent at jokes and at energy and thought and madness and so on. And it suits the sitcoms he's written and the novels he's written. But Richard's talent is much more long-form character ideas that develop. And so, of course, it suddenly made sense when he moved from TV to cinema. And it just works, doesn't it? I mean, goodness me, that golden period of Four Weddings and Notting Hill and all the others, Love Actually and so on. He's proved himself to be just magnificent.
All right, we're
and of course, he grew up in Australia.
Yeah.
You presumably knew that.
I did know that.
Yeah.
We're going to take a little break because we're going to talk a bit of cricket.
Cricket.
And we're also going to talk about this big show that's coming up, An Evening with Stephen Fry.
This Sunday in Perth, An Evening with Stephen Fry. A lot of work's gone into that, Steve. The naming?
Plus,
because you're a genius,
well,
you're very
you know.
clever. I was waiting for this great, this will be good. What's it called?
well, they kept asking me what the show would be, and I said, well, and possibly a bit of that. And they said, well, sort of like An Evening with. And I said, yeah, well, it's that sort of. And then by the time I'd actually thought I would give myself a weekend to come up with a title, they'd said, oh, no, we printed the poster.
Oh, good. And the audience can ask questions.
Yes, that's right.
What, at any stage put their hand
No,
up?
because that is very distracting and difficult, and you have to get microphones to them and marshals and so on. So we've got quick response codes. You know what those are?
Yeah.
Yeah, QR codes. Yeah, yeah, QR.
Is that what QR means?
Yes, that's
Quick
what-
response.
Yes.
I was wondering when that was going to land with
I
you.
never realised QR code is quick response.
Yeah, that's as simple as
So
that.
you learn something every day. Now tell us about your cricket. Did you play cricket or you
I
always...
played very, very badly, but with enormous enthusiasm,
Yes.
which is probably the worst way you can do it. You annoy your talented friends. So I ended up as a scorer, and these days as a very happy umpire.
Umpire?
I love umpiring, I just umpired a few weeks ago a match on the island of Corfu, in the Mediterranean, which was a very splendid place to have a game of
You've
cricket.
also just finished a stint as the president of the
I
MCC.
was president of the MCC, which is the club that still is responsible for the laws of cricket internationally and owns Lord's Cricket Ground. And it used to run cricket worldwide, but of course that was really the sort of stink of empire, essentially. Well, and of course cricket we can't deny, it is everywhere there was a colonial footprint is where cricket still thrives. And it may be the only good thing to come out of empire, possibly. I don't know. But it certainly, to me, is a good thing to have come out of it. It's a great game, and I love it very much. And it is something that you can commit yourself to and feel and love without actually playing.
Yeah.
You know, it's got so many facets.
Jim was a cricketer.
Yes, I
Not
gather.
bad. He'll tell you about it later. Were you at the Aussie blow up the day with Alex Carey?
I certainly was. As president of the MCC, I was deeply embarrassed by the whole damn business. It was shocking. It really was.
It was on, wasn't it?
Wajin, yeah, and two fine players and really perfectly reasonable play. Idiocy on the part of Bairstow to leave his wicket open like that, and that's how most of us felt. But unfortunately, as you know, it tipped over. And on the one hand, there's the crowd in one of the stands, the the Compton and Edridge stands, they're called, and they are always the ones who drink the most. You've got the various hills, as they used to be, the hill at the Gabba, I remember.
Bay 13.
Full of very, very raw language, to say the least, and yellow with Castlemaine tinnies by the end of the day. And, well, that's our equivalent in a sort of English way. And they were shouting, same old Aussies, always cheating.
Always cheating.
And it all got a bit unpleasant. But then, of course, typically it was actually the fully upper-class members of the MCC who slightly let us down, it seems.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a wonderful club, and it does such good for cricket, but that was a bad moment. And it was, as so often happens in Britain, it was a hark back to a sort of image of the country, which those of us who live there are so anxious for us to escape. But instead, you just picture this.
Well, we had Marcus Harris in last week.
Yes.
Oh, did you?
Who was not playing in that
No, he
game,
wasn't,
but was part of the touring party, and famously said to one of the very stiff members in the room, I think his words were, "You wrote the rules, you fucking idiot." And I said to Marcus, because we were laughing about it later, I said, "Marcus, everything about that's fine except for their laws."
Exactly.
They're
I
not
was
rules.
going to say that. They're not rules. Cricket has laws. Yeah.
It was a good comeback by Marcus.
Very
Very good.
Very
It was.
good.
So I was saying to Bill before, the celebrity support of the game of cricket in England is very strong. Mick Jagger loves his cricket.
Yes.
Elton John loves his cricket.
Very much so.
Hugh Grant, you often see at the cricket.
Yes,
So there's
indeed.
lots of. Why is that, do you think?
Something about the game. I think going to watch it is like the best things in life, simultaneously relaxing and exciting. And when those two things come together, that you're kind of the pace of it, the rhythm of it allows you just to sit and chat to people. There's a kind of natural etiquette amongst football, amongst cricket like lovers, which isn't the same amongst football. Because I've been at a Fulham match with Hugh Grant, and he gets kind of mobbed, although he's a big Fulham supporter. But it is quite difficult for him. So in the end, he has to go into the director's thing, and then the people go, "Oh, he's not a real person," But it's quite difficult. Whereas cricket, you can sit amongst people, and they respect your space, but they'll banter with you. But it's just and there's just something about the game that appeals to a certain kind of mind, a mind that finds. I think you introduced me very nicely as a storyteller. It is cricket has stories within stories within stories within stories. There's the narrative of that particular bowler against that particular bat, and even the narrative, which sounds very nerdy, of that bowler when he's bowling that end against that particular batsman, or that bowler against left-handers. Those are tiny little narratives compared to the narratives against that captain and what he's just done, and what the series is doing, what the game is doing within the series, what that day of that match. Everything has these different stories and different peaks and troughs and so on, and that people who are drawn to, making stories, writing songs, things like that, just find cricket somehow has it plucks a string that they're very familiar with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not that I don't love other games too.
No, you love your soccer.
Yeah, and my darts.
And your dart.
I love darts. Don't you love darts? What a game.
We spoke to Luke Littler.
Luke.
Oh, did you?
And he didn't speak to us, but I don't know. He's like Mr. Bean. He doesn't talk.
Well, bless him. He's only 17. He's only just 17.
But he just didn't speak. I
I'm
think
sorry
you
to
might
hear
be the
that.
most intelligent, smartest person we've ever had on this show.
Comfortably.
Behave yourself.
Yeah. Are you a genius?
No, I wouldn't say that.
What's your IQ?
It's high. I mean, at school, I was. I can't remember the number, but I remember my parents saying, "Oh, well, the school has said that when you took that test, it was a very strange result." And they weren't sure quite how to tell me. And then I joined Mensa when I was like
Joined
11.
Mensa?
Well, I
Oh, there you go.
puts you in
but
the
for a very
genius
short
category.
time, I discovered it was full of. There is no relation at all, and it's very important to remember this, between moral quality, likability, decency, and intelligence.
Yes.
There just isn't.
yeah.
And a lot of people of furiously high cognitive abilities can be monstrous dickheads.
Yeah.
Exactly. Plus, they wouldn't know the right way to sit on a dunny. They're just incredibly dumb. So there's social intelligence. There's and there's the kind of intelligence that works out the best way to live, and that's
Street smart.
Yeah, street smart, and it's a very there are so many different
You're
kinds.
spot on there.
Yeah.
Have you got a nickname, Stephen Fry?
No, do you know that's a? I don't think I have. I mean, behind my back, probably. I don't know, but
French?
Oh, my God. He's going to start throwing some
French fry.
darts at you.
French fry, eh?
What
Well,
the hell?
I mean, at school, it was always the obvious things about, Fry's Turkish Delight was a chocolate bar
we've still
and those
got
sort of things. And
Fry? Stir?
Beanpole, for a long time, it was called Bean, but simply because it's hard to believe now, but when I shot up in growth, as you do when you're a teenager, and I didn't shoot out in width at all, so I was if I stood sideways, you couldn't really see me. Yeah.
So tell us about the show. How long
Yeah.
do you talk, and then how long do people get to ask their questions?
I'll talk in the first half and end with a reading of a new book I've written, and it's just a little reading just to send people off into the lobbies and foyers with a desire to buy lots of drinks and so on, and then I'll address questions, and I will make it clear before I send them off that anything is possible. And that the more unlikely, the more I might enjoy it, and then I'll spend the interval looking at them as they come in.
Oh, okay,
and
right.
come
So
in
you can
and
QR.
filter the ones
Yeah,
in and
exactly.
out.
QR.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Quick response.
Quick response.
That's it. You had to look down, didn't
Oh,
you?
did
I
you got to go. You're a busy man.
Yes, we do have to
We're
let you
getting
go.
the wind up.
Oh,
out here.
I'm sorry.
do have to
It's
let
been
you go.
such a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
It's
been
an honour
great.
to have you in
Well
the
done.
studio.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you
Bloody
very
oath.
much indeed.
An
All the
evening
very best.